All right, so today we're diving into something pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Be the wolf among sheeps.
Okay.
Even the title, I want to know more.
It's definitely eye-catching and maybe a little provocative.
Yeah,
Mm.
right. So for this deep dive, we are looking at an excerpt that's all about encouraging people to step up as leaders and really embrace their individuality.
Right.
It's important to note this is a motivational piece,
Okay.
not a scientific study.
Right.
So we'll explore its core ideas, see if they hold up. But more importantly, I'm curious how this wolf concept might actually apply to you, the listener,
Right.
in your own life.
Yeah, that's a great goal. And I think it's important to acknowledge that analogies, while powerful, can sometimes oversimplify things.
Okay, you're already making me think.
Yeah.
So the core metaphor here is wolves representing independent leaders and sheep being the followers.
Right.
The text really emphasizes this imagery of wolves as these fierce, decisive creatures. But isn't there more to the story when it comes to wolves in the real world?
Absolutely. While it's true that wolves often display leadership qualities, they are also highly social animals.
Okay.
They rely on their pack to survive and thrive.
Right.
But as for sheep, well, they're not quite the mindless followers we often imagine them to be.
So maybe it's not as simple as wolves good, sheep bad.
Exactly. The text is using this imagery
Mm-hmm.
to get a point across, to create a contrast between leading and following, but the reality is much more nuanced.
That makes sense. So the text goes on to list several reasons why people might get stuck in this sheepish mindset. The first one is the fear of failure, which, let's be honest, who hasn't felt that at some point?
It's a pretty universal experience, and from a psychological standpoint, it makes perfect sense. Our brains are wired to avoid potential threats, and failure can certainly be perceived as a threat to our ego or our sense of security. But what's interesting is that research suggests that people who are willing to embrace failure, to see it as a learning opportunity, are often the ones who achieve the most success.
That's a great point. So instead of fearing failure, maybe it's about reframing it as a stepping stone? Right.
The text also mentions the desire for approval as another reason people might hold back. Is that something you see in your work?
Definitely. The need for social acceptance is deeply ingrained in us. It's part of our evolutionary heritage.
Okay.
But in today's world, with the constant pressure of social media and the desire to fit in, this need for approval can become almost overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
It can lead people to make choices that aren't truly aligned with their own values or goals.
That's something for you to consider, listener.
Mm-hmm.
Are you making choices because they truly resonate with you, or are you swayed by what others expect?
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the text talks about comfort zones as another trap.
Right.
But isn't some level of comfort necessary for productivity?
That's a great question. And you're right, comfort isn't inherently bad.
Okay.
In fact, it can be essential for creating a sense of stability and allowing us to focus our energy on our goals.
Right.
But the problem arises when comfort turns into complacency, when it prevents us from taking risks or trying new things that could lead to growth and fulfillment. So it's about recognizing when that comfort zone becomes a cage, right?
Exactly.
Now let's get to the exciting part. The text lays out 6 steps to help people cultivate their inner wolf.
Okay.
The first step is mastering self-awareness.
This is where it gets really interesting because self-awareness is the foundation for pretty much everything else. Without a clear understanding of your strengths, weaknesses, values, and motivations, it's incredibly difficult to make intentional choices that align with your desired path.
I totally agree. It's like trying to navigate a maze in the dark.
Yeah.
You might stumble around and eventually find your way out, but it's going to be a lot more challenging and frustrating than if you had a map.
And that's essentially what self-awareness provides, a map of your inner landscape.
I love that analogy. The text really emphasizes the importance of knowing your territory and capabilities. How can people go about developing this deeper self-understanding?
There are so many great tools and resources available these days, from personality assessments to mindfulness practices to simply journaling and reflecting on your experiences. There are countless ways to start exploring your inner world. But one of those powerful techniques I've found is feedback. Actively seeking feedback from others, from people you trust, can provide incredibly valuable insights into your blind spots.
So it's not just about introspection, it's about getting an outside perspective.
Exactly,
Right.
because we all have biases and limitations in our self-perception. Feedback from others can help us see ourselves more clearly, both the good and the not so good. And then, of course, it's about taking that feedback and actually doing something with it, using it to make adjustments to course correct, to become more aligned with who you want to be.
Okay, I'm already feeling like I need to do some self-reflection after this.
Yeah.
The second step the text outlines is taking calculated risks. Now, I think a lot of people hear risk and immediately get nervous,
Mhm.
but it sounds like this is about being strategic, not reckless.
Absolutely. Calculated risks are about assessing the potential rewards and consequences before taking action. It's about weighing the pros and cons and then making a conscious decision based on that evaluation.
So it's not about jumping out of a plane without a parachute.
Definitely not. It's
Yeah.
more like choosing to invest in a new venture or going back to school to pursue a different career path or even having a difficult conversation that you've been putting off.
So it can be big things, but also smaller everyday choices.
Exactly. And the key is to approach those choices with a sense of awareness and intentionality, to ask yourself, what are the potential benefits of taking this risk? What are the potential downsides?
Mm.
And am I willing to accept those potential downsides in pursuit of the potential benefits?
That's a really helpful framework, and it takes the fear out of it, or at least makes it feel more manageable.
Yeah.
Right. The next step the text mentions is embracing solitude.
Okay.
Now, I have to admit, for someone like me who loves connecting with people,
Yeah.
this one feels a little counterintuitive.
Yeah. I understand that feeling. We often associate solitude with loneliness or isolation, which can feel uncomfortable, especially in a world that constantly emphasizes connection and social interaction. But what if we shift our perspective and view solitude as a tool, a valuable practice for self-discovery and growth?
Interesting. So it's not about being a hermit and completely withdrawing from the world.
Not necessarily. It's more about carving out intentional time and space for yourself away from the demands and distractions of daily life. Think of it as a chance to recharge, to reconnect with your inner world, and to tap into your creativity and intuition. There's a fascinating study published in the Journal of Environmental Psychology that found that spending time in nature, even for short periods, can significantly enhance creative problem-solving abilities. That sense of peace and tranquility you get from being in nature, that is the kind of environment solitude can cultivate.
So it's about finding those moments of stillness, even amidst the business of life. I'm starting to see the appeal of this, but how does this idea of embracing solitude tie into the overall concept of being the wolf?
It's about cultivating independence and self-reliance. Wolves, while part of a pack, are also capable of venturing out on their own. They're comfortable being alone, and that allows them to develop a strong sense of self and a clear understanding of their own needs and desires.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about developing that inner compass, that inner strength that allows you to make decisions based on what's truly right for you, rather than being swayed by external pressures.
Mhm.
Okay, on to step 4, which is breaking free from the herd mentality.
Mhm.
This one feels particularly relevant in today's world where it's so easy to get caught up in trends and groupthink.
It's a real challenge, especially with the constant influx of information and opinions we're exposed to through social media and other channels. It can feel like everyone has an opinion on everything, and it's easy to start questioning your own judgment.
Yeah, and sometimes it feels like the loudest voices are the ones that get the most attention, even if their ideas aren't necessarily the most well thought out.
Right.
So how do we navigate this?
Yeah.
How do we break free from that herd mentality without completely isolating ourselves?
It's a delicate balance, and it starts with developing critical thinking skills, learning to question information, to evaluate sources, to consider different perspectives, and to form your own conclusions based on evidence and reasoning.
Yeah.
It's about becoming a discerning consumer of information rather than passively accepting everything you're told.
So it's about thinking for yourself, essentially,
Yeah,
not just blindly following the crowd.
exactly. And it's not about being contrarian for the sake of it.
Right.
It's about being thoughtful, deliberate, and intentional in your choices and your beliefs.
That's a powerful idea. It's about taking ownership of your own mind rather than letting it be shaped by external forces.
All right, let's move on to step 5, which is developing resilience. I think we all know that life throws curveballs. So how do we build that inner strength to bounce back from setbacks?
Resilience is essential for navigating the ups and downs of life, and it's a skill that can be cultivated. One of the most effective ways to build resilience is to reframe challenges as opportunities for growth. Instead of seeing setbacks as failures, view them as valuable learning experiences. That's easier said than done, though, right? When you're in the midst of a difficult situation, it can be hard to see the silver lining.
It definitely takes practice, but one technique that can be helpful is to ask yourself, what can I learn from this experience? How can I use this situation to become stronger and more resourceful? By focusing on the potential for growth, you can shift your mindset from one of defeat to one of empowerment.
So it's about turning those negative experiences into something positive.
Yeah.
finding the lesson or the opportunity within the challenge.
Exactly. And another key aspect of resilience is self-compassion. When you experience a setback, it's important to be kind to yourself, to acknowledge that you're human and that everyone makes mistakes. Beating yourself up only adds to the stress and makes it harder to bounce back.
That's such a good reminder. We often hold ourselves to these impossibly high standards, and then we're surprised when we fall short. Giving ourselves grace is so important. And finally, we arrive at step 6, which is be a protector, not a predator.
Okay.
This one feels like it speaks to the ethical dimension of leadership.
Absolutely. True leadership is not about exploiting or dominating others. It's about using your strength and influence to empower and uplift those around you. It's about creating a positive impact, not just for yourself, but for your community and the world at large.
I love that it's about being a force for good rather than using your power for selfish gain. But how does this idea of being a protector relate back to the wolf analogy? Aren't wolves predators by nature?
While it's true that wolves do hunt and kill prey, they also exhibit strong protective instincts, especially within their pack. They're fiercely loyal to their family and their territory. So it's about channeling that protective energy, that sense of responsibility, and using it to create a safe and supportive environment for yourself and others.
So it's about being a leader who inspires trust and respect rather than fear and intimidation.
Exactly. It's about using your strength to uplift and empower, not to control or manipulate.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
We've explored the nuances of the wolf and sheep analogy, the reasons why people might get stuck in a sheepish mindset, and the 6 steps to cultivate those wolfish qualities. Now, the text goes on to highlight the potential rewards of embracing this mindset.
Okay.
What are some of the benefits that people might experience?
Well, the text talks about increased confidence, personal and professional growth, earning respect from others, and ultimately living life on your own terms. And I think it's fair to say that developing those wolfish qualities we discussed, self-awareness, risk-taking resilience, can absolutely contribute to those outcomes.
Those are some pretty compelling benefits, but I'm also curious, is it a guarantee?
Yeah.
Does embracing this mindset automatically unlock all those rewards?
That's a great question, and it's where we need to apply a bit of critical thinking and nuance.
Okay.
While the text paints a positive picture, it's important to acknowledge that there can be potential downsides to any mindset,
Right.
even one that encourages leadership and independence.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What are some potential pitfalls we should be aware of?
For instance, if someone takes this wolf among sheep idea too far, they might start to see themselves as superior to others. This can lead to arrogance and a lack of empathy, which can damage relationships and hinder collaboration.
That makes sense. It's like that fine line between confidence and cockiness.
Exactly.
So it's not about becoming a lone wolf in the literal sense, but about finding that balance between independence and connection.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected
Yeah.
and that true success often involves collaboration and support from others.
So for you, dear listener, it's about taking what resonates with you from this be the wolf concept and adapting it to your own unique circumstances.
Right.
What works for one person may not work for another.
Absolutely.
It's all about finding that sweet spot, that unique blend of wolfish and sheepish qualities that allows you to thrive authentically.
And that brings us to a crucial point throughout this deep dive. We've been discussing wolves and sheep as if they represent 2 completely separate categories, almost like opposing forces. But what if it's not that black and white?
Ooh, I like where you're going with this. It's like we've been building up this tension between the two, but maybe there's a way to integrate them.
Exactly. Instead of striving to be either the wolf or the sheep, what if we consider the possibility of embracing both? What if the true path to success and fulfillment lies in finding that delicate balance within ourselves?
So it's not about completely rejecting one or the other, but about recognizing the value of both.
Precisely. There are times when it's essential to tap into those wolfish qualities, the independence, the courage to challenge norms, the willingness to take risks. But there are also times when it's beneficial to embrace those sheepish qualities, the sense of community, the willingness to collaborate, the humility to follow when it's appropriate.
That's such a powerful insight. It's like we're expanding the metaphor, recognizing that we're not limited to these rigid categories.
And it makes sense when you consider the complexity of human nature. We're not one-dimensional beings. We have the capacity for both leadership and followership, for independence and interdependence.
So the key is to develop the self-awareness, to recognize which qualities are needed in different situations, to know when to step up and lead and when to step back and support others.
Exactly. It's about becoming a more well-rounded individual, someone who can adapt to different circumstances and roles.
This has been such an insightful conversation. It's really challenged me to rethink my own assumptions about leadership and what it means to be successful.
And I hope it sparks some reflection for you as well, listener.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a final question to ponder. What does it mean for you to embrace the best qualities of both the wolf and the sheep? How can you find that unique balance within yourself?
It's an ongoing journey of self-discovery, but one that's well worth the effort.
And remember, there's no one right answer. It's about finding what works for you, what allows you to live a life that feels authentic and fulfilling.
Until next time,
Yeah,
keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep striving to become the best version of yourself.
exactly. And it makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah,
Like, we as humans are complex.
right. We aren't one-dimensional.
Yeah.
We have the capacity for both leadership and followership, for independence and interdependence.
So the key is to develop that self-awareness.
Yeah.
To recognize what qualities are needed in different situations,
Right.
know when to step up and lead and when to step back and support.
It's about becoming a more well-rounded individual.
Right.
Someone who can adapt to different circumstances and roles.
This has been such an insightful conversation.
Yeah?
It's really challenged me to rethink my own assumptions about leadership and what it means to be successful.
Yeah, me too. And I hope it's given you listeners some things to think about as well.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Be the Wolf Among Sheep, we want to leave you with a final question.
Okay.
What does it mean for you to embrace the best qualities of both the wolf and the sheep?
Yeah.
How can you find that unique balance within yourself?
It's an ongoing journey of self-discovery, but one that is well worth the effort.
And remember, there's no one right answer.
Right.
It's about finding what works for you, what allows you to live a life that feels authentic and fulfilling.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep striving to become the best version of yourself.